It came from.
That's right. It came from. We're going to do a little something different this week. We actually got one from Discord. This is part of the show where we search all over the internet to bring you topics that the human factors community is talking about. So if you find any of these answers useful, give us a like or whatever it is, wherever you're watching, to help other people find this content. First up today, we have one from Tara Talon. Do you have any videos or helpful, useful electives to take in undergrad? So I actually answered this one in Discord, but I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, Barry.
Yeah, I think there's basically, I think having that idea about what it is that you want to go and do all the way through is kind of really helpful. Because if you know that you're really super keen on a specific thing, then anything you can do to block around that and support it. So looking at the adjacent route, sort of saying, if you're into design, well, you could do design elements. If you want to be doing, if you're into sort of testing or them type of things, then you could go and cluster around that. But then the flip side is to actually it doesn't necessarily support it, but look at almost the opposites idea as well, is do something completely different as well. The beauty about the human factor side of things is there is nothing, or there's very little that won't come in useful at some point. So if you want something just to be able to provide variety in your life, you can go and do something almost completely different, because actually it will probably come back and be helpful, and it will provide you some variety in the course that you're doing. So it kind of goes back to it depends. Depends what you want out of life. I think personally, if you focus too much on just one thing, you might not burn yourself out, but sicken yourself in doing that. So trying to find different things to do that are tangentially useful, but are different, I think help make a more interesting course that way. What about you, Nick? What was your words of wisdom?
Yeah, great. So great feedback. I think I want to mention one thing too. Tara Talon is in the chat. So if there's any other clarifications, this is rare that we actually have an "it came from" where the person is in the chat with us. So if there's any other clarifications, let us know. So I mentioned that there are 3 kind of ways in which you can tackle this, right? There's the fun route. The electives are, I think, meant to do that. They're encouraging you to go and look at hobbies or augment your experience. I think, for me, I did like an archaeology class, which was something that was cool. And I actually learned a lot from that class. I don't know if I use that stuff in my human factors training, but I'm glad I took it. It was fun. There's also, like music classes that you can take that will help stimulate your brain in other ways. And this is what I traditionally call the fun hobby route, right? There's also the support route, which is kind of like a way to augment your experience with stuff that will help you in the long run, right? You said maybe a business class here or there, maybe an engineering class to figure out how people write requirements, maybe a design class to help understand how that process is done, maybe a software development class to understand kind of what's possible with code and what different languages do. All these are really good options. Although you talked about burnout, that's a possibility here. But again, if you have interest in any of these things, you can almost double dip and say, yes, this is going to be fun and I'll learn something for it. Then there's what I almost don't recommend. It's kind of what I did in a lot of ways. It's kind of the fast track path. It's the quick and easy, pick courses that have easy teachers, that is, you don't care about the content. You can just kind of do the quizzes and skate by. And the reason that this is an option is because it will help you focus on some of the other classes that might be tougher. So if you're going to have to take in your program a very tough class with a very tough professor that has the reputation of being tough, this might be an option to offset some of that work that you'll have in another class. So all I'm saying here is just be strategic about it. I do want to bring up Frank, who's been on the show. He's actually in Discord too, responding to this. Frank is recommending the full support route. especially if those classes can be rolled into a minor. So this is kind of augmenting that major with a minor. Frank argues that hobbies can be pursued at less costs than going to college. And I agree. I think there's plenty of resources available to folks that they can go and find information for hobbies, but they don't have that one-on-one with a teacher, which I do think is really valuable for those. So I'm going to argue for still looking into that approach. I think, there's a communication class is another thing that I brought up that you can use to augment. We do a lot of communicating. Sitting here on a podcast, I'm communicating with you right now. I communicate with users. I communicate with stakeholders. There's a lot of things that you can learn from that class. Dictation, speech and dictation, that is something that you can also learn. Different languages, that's also communication, right? I know there's some language requirements in some of these things. I'm going on and on and on, but this is just to give anyone who else might be in this situation some ideas on how to look at this. So I don't know. That's kind of my thoughts. Do you have any other closing thoughts on this one before we move on?
Yeah, I guess the two that I would almost really push is one, you've already said, the communication side of things. So much about what we do in Human Factors is about bringing different groups of people together and being able to communicate with them, and including that is that public speaking element about being able to present. Not everybody is confident in public speaking. I mean, even now, I think we talked in the pre-show about imposter syndrome and things like that. Finding good techniques to get over them sort of issues is really, really helpful. The second one is project management. So learning a bit about project, not an in-depth course or anything like that, but learning about particularly the two main styles of agile and waterfall project management is quite useful, because you will come across quite a lot of that in different bits, and just knowing the terminology will give you a significant jump start in your early career, I would suggest.
Yeah. One last note. I did forget to mention that Frank also said that a writing class could be helpful. So I do think that is situational, but I do a lot of writing, so I can stand by that.